Andy Ain is a lawyer whose practice is concentrated on residential real estate, mortgage lending, and commercial transactions. He makes time to talk to Pi Media Group about dramatic changes, concerns, and how the Law Society has changed the rules in the functioning of a responsible real estate transaction. Andy discusses observations on social isolation, pricing, uncertainties, contractual obligations, critical teamwork, and protecting each other. Hi, Andy.
Hi, how are you, Sandra? Nice to speak to you.
Nice to speak to you. Thanks for making time for us today.
It's my pleasure.
We have some important topics to cover, like anything that has changed in real estate because of this time right now.
Well, it's been a pretty dramatic change, and every day we seem to see new changes, and the questions from our clients change day by day. But I'd be pleased to give you a summary of where I think we're at.
Love that.
Okay, so we heard very clearly from the Director of Titles that the land registry system will continue to operate notwithstanding COVID-19. Over the last couple of years, they've automated the system so it's an all web-based interface. So all real estate deals can be done from the comfort of your home on your laptop, and that's just the registration portion of it. But there's much more involved than just the registration, which I'm happy to get into with you if you'd like.
I'd love to. Yes, I think the more you can share with us, the better.
Okay, so the biggest change really involves seeing clients one-on-one. And where historically a client would come in, you'd meet with them in person, you'd go through their real estate transaction, they'd provide you the funds to close the deal. This has changed as a result of social distancing. We have now moved all client meetings to video conferencing. We had several impediments to doing this in the past. The biggest impediments we had was under our Law Society rules, we were required to confirm identity in person. In addition, we had to commission declarations from clients where that also based on the legislation that's in place today had to be in person. So we've had two directives from our Law Society allowing these changes to occur. So the first and foremost is that the Law Society has now provided us the opportunity to commission affidavits through video conferencing. The rules surrounding that are in the Commissioner of Taking Affidavits Act, and in the legislation it says in the presence of the commissioner. And the case law historically surrounding that has interpreted that to be in your physical presence. And now they have come up with a temporary reinterpretation to allow us to do it through video conferencing. So there's now provincial legislation that's been proposed to change that on a permanent basis, but there's a lot of concerns from lawyers about allowing this video conferencing because there are some risks to both the parties of fraud and identity theft, which are harder to confirm, obviously, by video, that there could be undue influence of the person who you're video conferencing if there's someone in the room threatening them or putting pressure on them. But given the situation, this was a wonderful alleviation or change to allow us to do this remotely. And the same rule applies with verification of ID. So we can now verify ID by them showing it to us basically over the camera. And it's not like we were ID experts anyway. In addition, the title insurers have stepped up. In the past, for $25, you can provide them information on someone's ID and they can confirm it. They've waived those fees to allow us to do that if we had any concerns that there might be some fraud related to that ID. So one of the paramount changes with clients is now meetings are done through Zoom or FaceTime or Skype, etc. So the other change is how people get us their money, whereas they used to come in with if they're buying a house with their closing funds and hand us a bank draft or certified check in order to protect all parties involved. They're now effectively either wiring us the money or putting in our Dropbox, calling us right away, and we run out and get their bank draft. So there is no risk to the client or to the staff member on the money exchange. So those are some of the changes that we've seen with respect to the actual functioning of a real estate transaction. But the one thing that we have heard clearly from the government is, one, we're an essential service. Two, the banks that provide the funding are an essential service, and that there is no intent at any point during this pandemic that the land registration systems will go down. So all deals should be able to be closed electronically. So that's a quick summary of some of the changes we're seeing in our real estate landscape for changes of how to meet with clients and an update on what's going on with the land registration system.
Okay, and any particular recommendations regarding offers during this particular time that would be important for realtors, buyers?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We started getting those questions in at the start of last week, and it seems to be changing day by day. A lot of the concerns, because we didn't know at the start of last week that we'd be declared an essential service and the land registry office wouldn't be declared an essential service, is what happens if all these things shut down. So first of all, even if the land registration service closes down, the title insurance companies have stepped in and there's gap coverage. So we can close a deal and the insurance covers it until the land registration system reopens. So those were some clauses we had looked at early. That's no longer really realistic. It certainly appears that, as I stated earlier, that there'll be no closure. So the other clauses that we're discussing and recommending, and obviously it's a case-by-case scenario, is what if someone is quarantined and can't sign or can't complete a deal because either they've contracted it or they're required to self-isolate. So one of the clauses, which is definitely in the benefit of the buyer more than the seller, is basically a clause requiring a mandatory extension of the closing for a minimum of 14 days if someone cannot function as a result of either having it or having to self-isolate. With respect to sellers, there's very little that they have to do to complete a deal except for sign a few documents. We're not encouraging these type of clauses because that doesn't protect them as well. But we have to look on a case-by-case basis. Those are the primary clauses. The other clauses is keys. So keys, where normally you'd pick up your key from the lawyer, we're putting in new clauses that keys will be left in lock boxes at the property. So specific clauses for keys, so no one has to, again, have any physical contact. And a recognition that the closing will be done paperless, so that everyone agrees that no original documentation will need to be provided and electronic signatures will be satisfactory. Those are the primary clauses that we're seeing, we're recommending, and we're seeing inserted in newly created real estate deals. And
what are your personal thoughts on real estate pricing currently?
Well, that's an interesting question. I've had the privilege and opportunity to speak to several of the major brokers in our area about that topic. And right now, while the market had been certainly heating up dramatically prior to COVID coming out, and we'd see a lot of deals that were unconditional. In other words, they weren't conditional on first obtaining finance. We're now seeing the deals becoming conditional, but the pricing remained pretty much the same. We haven't seen any dramatic change in pricing, but we're seeing what I would think, and we'll see this more and more over the next couple of months, is a shift from a seller's market to more of a buyer's market. There's going to be more and more properties listed due to the unfortunate situation people may be in where they need the money because they can't afford their house, or because buyers are reticent to commit right now to a real estate transaction with all the uncertainty in the air. So while we have not seen a shift in pricing, and again, I'm a real estate lawyer, not an agent or appraiser, so I can't, guarantee these statements, but this is my observation. I do anticipate we will see a shift over time if things continue with the economic downturn.
And what if a person has purchased a home in good faith and they have just lost their job or they're unable to make their payments? And also, I guess in that same conversation, talking a little bit about buyer's remorse, are people able to walk away from deals right now and get out of deals? And how does forced measure clauses in a standard real estate deal pertain to these situations with the current economic situation?
Well, those are great questions, and they're kind of interrelated. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, there has been no change as a result of this virus to people's contractual obligations. If you have a firm deal, which means you've waived all the conditions under the agreement of purchase and sale, and the conditions are the most common ones, conditional on financing, conditional on home inspection, then you have a firm and binding obligation. Nothing that's come out of this situation has changed that. So you've mentioned a small hot topic, which is force majeure. Force majeure means a superior force or an unforeseeable circumstance that prevents someone from fulfilling their contract. And the most common force majeure that we know in contract law is war, insurrection, and again, a pandemic would fall within this basket. However, unfortunately, the standard agreements of purchase and sale in Ontario do not contain force majeure clauses. So there is no right in these contracts to get out as a result of this pandemic. So if you have a binding agreement of purchase and sale, you're still responsible to complete it. Whether that's as a result of your illness or a result of your economic downturn or just because you have cold feet, you're still on the hook.
Now, what about people with private mortgages like VTBs, second and third mortgages? Is there any course of action that they have to defer their payments right now?
Well, we're seeing the courts have closed except for urgent matters. So it's very hard from an enforcement point of view to enforce the failure of someone honoring their obligations under their private second or third mortgages. So if you have a mortgage now and you're not paying, you're still in breach. You've still done something wrong unless you've negotiated some type of leniency with the lender, but the lender can't practically enforce that. So I'm certainly not recommending people not pay. They should absolutely pay, or they should make the appropriate arrangements. But right now, it's very unlikely people will have their homes sold out from under them during this period just because of what's going on. Again, unfortunately, it's causing a chain reaction. If you don't pay your private lender, they have other debts and bills to pay and so on and so forth. So, everyone still needs to recognize that they have their financial obligations that they made. And just talking about not meeting obligations, I want to go back to the discussion we were just having about what happens if you can't close your deal, or you're getting cold feet and you're worried about, I'm not going to go ahead with that. And as I said earlier, you have a firm binding contract. So if you don't honor the terms of that contract, if you choose not to close, you are liable to put the other party back in the same position as if you had closed. So, for example, if you bought a $500,000 house and you say to the seller, I'm not going to close because I don't have the money or because I have cold feet, the seller would be obligated to mitigate their damages and relist the property. If the seller couldn't sell the house for the same $500,000 but only sold it for $400,000 because of a changing market, they could seek recourse against that original buyer for the differential in their loss, plus all of their carrying costs between the original closing date and the new closing date of the second buyer that came and bought their house. So again, I want to remind your listeners how important it is to meet their obligations. You're much better off trying to negotiate a settlement to get out of your contract than to expose yourself to what could be a significant liability if you don't meet your obligations.
I guess the main focus here, too, is, doing our best to get people back to work. So as corporate lawyers, what are you doing or what do you suggest for people to protect corporations that face layoffs and possible closures at this time?
Well, again, that's not my primary area of practice, but I think it's important for people to recognize that there are soon to be incentives to keep people employed in small and medium businesses, subsidies that are being offered by the government, which hopefully actually we may hear more about later today.
Oh, good.
But to recognize if they have exposure, they're looking at long-term exposure, to take a patient approach, but not to wait too long to endanger the entire business. So they have to look at the risks, and they should get proper advice from an employment lawyer before they start initiating these layoffs.
And I guess one thing is for sure, the teamwork is more important now than ever. So how important is that to you and your firm?
It is critical. I mean, we've taken really extreme measures to work as a team and protect our team. So whereas we had 16 or 17 people working in the office prior to COVID, we now have 2 lawyers working from home, 2 lawyers working from the office, and around 8 or 9 team members working remotely. We've set them all up on remote computers, and only 4 or 5 team members work in the office, so we can respect social distancing, protect our team members. And we've instituted regular Zoom meetings. So Zoom is a wonderful app. We all get on our Zoom, and we have regular team meetings to make sure everyone understands what's going on and to update each other. And it's wonderful to see how the different team members are helping each other out, whether one's working remotely in the office to either assist them on a file, assist them in putting together the paper for a file if someone doesn't have those abilities from their home.
And I know how important your home and family are to you. What are some of the new systems or changes that you've made in your home for your family?
Well, obviously, my family is my number one priority, and I'm one of the 2 lawyers who has the privilege of working for home and working with my family. So I've now converted my dining room into a working office, and both my kids and my oldest son's girlfriend and my wife are living with us now, and so it's just balancing everybody where dad's home, but dad's really at the office is something for everyone to get used to. And, we've converted different rooms in our house to have new functions so everyone can sort of entertain themselves and keep functioning. My wife, for example, converted our guest room, because obviously we're not anticipating a guest anytime soon, into an art studio and workout room, which everyone is enjoying and participating in. So it's been wonderful.
It is wonderful. Andy, thank you so much for sharing your time, your personal opinions and expertise with Pi Digest, and I look forward to seeing you face-to-face sometime soon.
I can't wait. Face-to-face will be really an exciting change.
Yes, it will be. We'll look forward to that, and we'll speak again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye for now. Thanks for listening. We would love for you to subscribe, like, and share our conversations. Many more to follow. To see our digital publications, check us out on PiMediaGroup.com.